Hi, this is Richard Murray with another session of Parking Lot Theology. I have been asked on more than one occasion, what is the difference between going to law school, because I'm an attorney, I'm a full-time attorney, and going to seminary school, because I also attended seminary and got a master's in practical theology many years ago. And I've been asked, well, what's the difference, particularly with regard to how you read a text or how you read the Bible or how you read any sort of law, human or divine, what's the difference? And I would say that the difference is night and day. And it's almost comically different, because lawyers have a bad reputation, and we deserve it largely. But, part of it is, too, that lawyers, to their credit, are honest about language. And when I say they're honest that language is dishonest, all right? And that there's always more than one way to read a text. There's always more than one way to skin a cat. And one way can be good and another way can be good. They both can be good, but be in juxtaposition to each other. Whereas, unfortunately, when we get to theology school, we find that theologians often adopt one hermeneutic and one way to read a text, and they won't admit, for the most part, that language does lie, and it lies big time. It can lie just by passage of time, by usage, by culture, by the way we're using it. Language is so slippery. I mean, it just changes continually. And language is imperfect, and until we understand, and at least lawyers, they don't try to make language perfect, they just try to point out how imperfect it is and how there are different ways to read things. And that if we're going to read any text or any law in the best possible way, we need to hear all the opinions and then apply the law today, here and now, the best that it suits us today, here and now. And does that mean sometimes we play loose with language? Yes, that's what it means, because we follow the spirit of the law or the conscience of the law. Whereas if we're tied to the letter of the law, which unfortunately theologians often are, or to their own way of reading the letter of the law, then they're going to read it every nail they're going to hit with a hermeneutical hammer. And by that I mean there's one way and one way only to read this text, and that's my way. And every other way to read the text is illegitimate. And so I guess I'm sticking up for lawyers to a degree, because at least lawyers tend to be, and I'm not saying all theologians aren't intellectually honest. Sure, there are many honest ones. But what I'm saying is, in terms of how they're trained and how we're trained differently. The lawyers are trained to take a text and to read it any way you can, every different way you can. Even if you disagree it, learn to read it the way you disagree with it, and be intellectually honest about it, that there are different ways to interpret it, different ways to read it, different understandings of it. Very little black and white out there in terms of the law. There's always applications and differing applications and understandings and intentions of it. And there's always a big thing with the Constitution, just as with the Bible. Well, what's the original intent? Well, what's the original intent of the author, the original intent of God, the original intent of the human author? Whose original intent are we talking about? And would it be so coded to a historical context that we can't use our common sense now, that we can't use our interaction with the Spirit now to read a text? And not just the Bible, but any text. I've written a paper that I'll post soon. I've posted it before, but on the different ways to read the Bible, and on how there are two ways to read the Bible, basically. One, when it's a closed text, when it's dead literal, all you can do is go back to the human author owns it, and only what the human author meant, and only what the human author meant. And I come from a place of, as I've studied the different reading styles, of something called post-structuralism, or Christian post-structuralism is what I would call it, which says that the text remains open. That whoever writes a text, any text, that text is bequeathed to the next generation, to the next circle of readers, and each circle of reader that hits it improves the text or reads it differently or carries the baton like we're carrying the baton around the track. And that's the way that reading ought to be with a biblical text as well. That one reads it, another takes it, improves it, applies it to today. We learn, we grow, we mature. The text is fluid, organic. We stand on the shoulders of the biblical writers. They don't stand on our shoulders. And I think that that's a key difference. So anyhow, I don't mean to say anything mean about theologians, because I have many theologians who are my closest friends, and I guess I engage in theology too, although I would not call myself a theologian, but I guess some people might, some people might call me a poor theologian. But at any rate, I'm intrigued with the differences. I'm glad I went to law school, and even though lawyers get a lot of bad press and we get all sorts of jokes made about us, I know that. But at least at the end of the day, when I read a text totally differently than my neighbor reads the text, my opposing attorney reads the text, afterwards we shake hands and we go, we go pat each other on the back and go have dinner together. And there's something, I don't know, blessed about that. And if theologians could get along in differing camps as well as lawyers do, I know it would be a better world. So anyhow, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.